Hi, this is Sue Berg from Monroe County Extension Service, and we're here today to enjoy learning about jams and jellies and how to safely preserve them, and to maybe share some tips with you that would allow you to have fun with them, as well as making something a little unique and making special gifts for people. And I have my friend Stephanie here, and I'm going to let her introduce herself.
I'm Stephanie Solomon. I'm the Assistant Director of Mother Hubbard's Cupboard. We're a local food pantry with a focus on nutrition and gardening education. So self-sufficiency and food preservation is really important to us. And we're excited to learn from Sue and share her resources with our clients.
Well, we are pleased to be able to cooperate this way. We offer a jam and what do we call it?
Canning and jamming.
Canning and jamming in September.
Most popular class waiting list every year.
And actually do canning. And our peach jam here is a product of our project from last fall. But jams and jellies are really a lot of fun to work with because you can make your own flavors, you can preserve the fruits, and actually you can do things with non-fruits when you start doing jams and jellies. But let's go back to some of the basics first so that we get that out of the way, and then we can talk about the fun things.
All right.
And that is that when you're talking about canning, you need to remember to use canning jars or canning proof jars. And so we can, go with these regular mason jars, from canning boxes, or you might find them at the garage sales and things like that. Main key is that the bottom of the jar is domed. That there's a very thick ridge of glass in the bottom. The other thing that you need to remember is that the top of the jar needs to have a very smooth finish on the top. So if you're buying or being given jars from a garage sale or from someone who has decided they don't want to can anymore, they don't have the space to store them, those are the two things you need to look for before you ever start cleaning them up and getting them ready to can in. And so you can use things like mayonnaise jars, maybe some of the tomato sauce jars, but one of the things you have to remember is that dome bottom and thick glass at the bottom, but also that the lid, a dome lid, will fit tightly and perfectly on the top.
Right.
And that the ring that you put that dome lid on with will screw down hand tight to the top of the jar. And so you don't have to buy fancy jars. The main thing is with jams and jellies, back in the old days we used to be able to use wax. And so you could make them in teacups, and you could make them in fancy glasses. And when I was early in my marriage, we had access to maraschino cherry juice. And so we made cherry jelly for everybody that we knew for Christmas because we had no money. And we put them in glasses and all sorts of things, and then whipped wax to put on the top. But the problem now is that, again, like a lot of our processing has had to change because we don't have the cold root cellars. And so that the wax is no longer an acceptable way to preserve jams and jellies because of the mold issue.
Right. So we don't have the same food system, so we don't want to preserve in the
same
ways.
we have to change it. And that's probably a hard thing for a lot of people who grew up always pouring hot paraffin on the top of jams and jellies. And I remember as a child thinking, oh, whoever got to the jar first, when it was first opened, got to chew that wax like gum. We didn't know any better at the time. So, things change. But the jar needs to be safe for canning. The other thing is that the jar can always be recycled and reused as long as the rim on the top is smooth. The ring can always be reused as long as you wash them and make sure they don't get rusty. And so the easy way to do this is to take them off after you've processed them and are ready to store them. Wash them thoroughly, and then I hang them on a clothes hanger. And just slide them on the bottom bar, and then that way they stay dry, and I can always find them. And when I come and do workshops with you, the students always look at me funny because they see these two coat hangers hanging on the kitchen cabinet doors, and they go, oh. But that way I can always pull them off real quickly, no matter what size, whether it's a regular mouth jar or whether it's a largemouth jar. I've got them there ready to go.
And keep track of them for the next time you can or jam.
It's very easy to do that. The other thing you have to do is remember that this cannot be recycled as a canning lid because there's this rubber gasket on it that gets soft when you warm it before you put it on the jar. and then when you go to take it off, there's going to be a ridge in that rubber. It may not look like a very deep ridge, but it's not safe to use again for canning. You can use it for dry storage, like to put on a pasta, on a gallon can for pasta or something like that, but not to be used as a canner. Now you can use it when you store your jelly after you've opened it up. You can always use it that way in the refrigerator, but not to process it again.
Right.
So these you always have to replace. And this one happens to be a fancy one, which I used as gifts when I made strawberry jam one year for Christmas.
Nice.
And put the strawberry lid on as a way, again, to dress it up, and use the little tiny jars for it, so that way I didn't, one batch made lots of gifts.
Right.
So it made a whole lot less expensive. And for people who don't need to eat a lot of jam and jelly because of dietary restrictions, but that's fun to have some once in a while.
Right. It's a good treat.
And so that largemouth or regular rings the same way. And then some of the gadgets that work very nicely for canning is, number one, you need to have a timer out. And we always have good intentions. Even the stove timer or the microwave timer is great if you're still in the kitchen.
Right.
But like me, I can't possibly sit still. So when I'm canning and things are being processed in the canner, I go and do a load of laundry, or I go out to the garden to pick more berries or whatever. So I have to carry the timer with me to make sure that I don't over-process.
Right.
Because it's just as important not to over-process as it is to under-process.
Right.
For food safety. Another item, particularly for jam and jelly, is a funnel. And this is what we call a jar filler. And it's like a big funnel with a big hole in it. And so what we do is we put that on the jar, and then it gives you a bigger space and a taller space to be able to pour the hot sugary syrup into the jar without having to.
You don't want to lose any of that.
Exactly. And then, of course, it also fits in the largemouth jar. It just goes a little bit deeper. So this, under $5 if you buy it new. You can maybe even find one in a garage sale somewhere. And then the other piece that I swear by is, if I lost this, I couldn't can.
I lost mine for a season.
Oh, no.
I had to buy a new one.
Oh, no. So now you've got one for each hand.
Too many burns. Yeah.
Yes.
I'll give one away to a friend.
Is that when you've got your food in the canner, and all these foods have to be processed. Jams and jellies have to be processed now. Again, because the change in the environment and sources of food and so on. But when you take it out of the hot water bath, you're going to have it all wet. And the first time canner is going to say, well, I can just pick it up with a hot pad. You put it on here, it soaks up the water from the top of the lid, you squeeze it down like this, and you've got your thumbs in the water.
Right.
Ouch.
Yeah.
Burns on hands, and then you try to get it to move it over onto the newspaper to let it cool, and you probably drop it and tip it. And then you've lost your seal.
Right. Definitely a worthwhile tool.
Yes.
Everyone should invest in.
And what makes it nice is that it will wrap around this thick rim of the jar. Get it up here where it belongs. And you can lift it. You can walk the library with this and never lose it. Right. And the other thing is that it gives you distance away from the hot water and steam, so you don't steam your hands, because that after a while can hurt really badly as well. So these two items are the two things I would put on my wish list. If you're going to go do any serious canning, these two items are a must to have in your kitchen for your canning purposes. And so basic equipment is real simple. For jams and jellies, if you have a stock pot, you can process your jams and jellies in that. Again, you need to have some type of a rack or a barrier on the very bottom of your pot, so that you don't have the glass touching directly on the bottom of the pan. If you are using a glass top stove, you need to check your manufacturer's directions, because many times they'll tell you not to can on a glass top, because it's the reverse process, that the glass is on the bottom and the metal's right straight on top of it, and it gets too hot and gets hot spots, and then you have to break the top of your glass top
So you need to go to a friend's house.
Right. Or there may be an adapter, depending on what brand you have. There is an adapter that's like a trivet, that's heat resistant, that you can put on your burner, that gives that space so the metal isn't directly on the burner itself.
Okay.
So my mom does that with hers, because she has the glass top, and she's not broken hers in over 40 years, so we're okay with that. But be sure to follow manufacturer instructions. So we're going to hot water bath this, and in a stock pot you can do it by putting a heat resistant plate upside